Hi everybody, welcome to Module 3. No camera tonight. I'm having a really bad hair day. It's very muggy out. My hair does not cooperate when it is muggy. So tonight in this module we're going to cover teams, teamwork, and conflict. We all know that the system that we work in, the healthcare system, is a very complex organization. We operate under very high stakes, in a very regulatory environment. There's a lot of policy that governs us, best practices, and the coordination and delivery of safe, high-quality care really demands reliable teamwork and collaboration. And that teamwork and collaboration has to stretch not only across the organization, but through the different disciplines, through the technical areas, and able to successfully maneuver around cultural boundaries. Present-day teams have shifted from an individual focus to an interprofessional focus. We are really interdependent upon each other and other disciplines to really contribute to safe, high-quality care. We can no longer have those silos. To address any gaps in achieving high-functioning and effective teams, teamwork has become a core competency in many of the healthcare educational pathways. Despite adding this, we still have gaps that remain, and how well teams exist and how well they function and how they deal with conflict, and we'll go through that in a little bit. There are types of teams which can be identifiable social work units consisting of two or more people with several unique characteristics. You might see that as an IV team, right? Teams can also have two or more people who interact dynamically, interdependently, and adaptively toward a common and valued goal. They have specific roles or function and have a limited time membership. This could be a project team, implementation of an electronic health record or some new technology. And teamwork is a process that describes interactions among team members who combine collective resources. I work in a very regulated environment right now, and we have it is a really good example of how teams can function really well or can function really poorly. In my industry, I work with physicians, engineers. It could be hardware engineers, software engineers, electrical, safety. I work with respiratory therapists, people who specialize in clinical studies, people who are specialize in quality and risk management, as well as in different areas of the regulatory environment. And that can be, such as like the Food and Drug Administration or different pieces of the government. And why do I bring this up? Systems theory and teams. The system theory views team communication as a group of subsystems, with each subsystem of the team providing different skills, knowledge, expertise, and input to help attain team and organizational goals. They have roles, norms, status, and relationships, and those influence the team's development. And status can also be perceived by a role or a title or a license. And even within disciplines, there are often some pretty good distinctions, which could be, amount of research somebody does, their reputation, are they on the speaker circuit, do they have a lot of publications? And even within this definition leaves out is, and what I'm trying to get at is, in where I work, it's a global company, and so we have to try to mesh not only time zones but languages, ways of working, different customs, and it can be very challenging working in such a complex environment. So, teams and teamwork. How do we all get started with this? So back in the 1920s, 1930s at Western Electric, they decided to study teams as a way to increase production by what they were doing was manipulating the lighting. And this, what came out of this little study that they did is called the Hawthorne Works. And they did two groups that were formed, and they made adjustments to not only lighting, but they also started manipulating other variables such as brakes. They later started observing social and emotional interactions. And what the study concluded was that the relationship between coworkers could affect productivity. The better the relationship, the higher the productivity. They also found there was less dissatisfaction. So specifically, becoming part of a team, gaining the support of teammates, and feeling a sense of responsibility to colleagues motivated positive changes in the employees' performance. So, teamwork also got a boost from the patriotic spirit of World War II. It was boosted by slogans such as this: "We can do it." This is my favorite saying. And wartime activities like a victory garden. The prevailing sentiment of the period was that every citizen needed to contribute for the U.S. to achieve victory. And a lot of our modern understanding of teams comes from this era. In addition, teams were, and I lost my page, sorry. In addition, teams were studied using the military and the aviation industry. The military's emphasis on brotherhood and cooperation greatly influenced the culture of team building in the coming decades. The aviation industry transformed itself to a highly safe system, providing input into team collaboration, communication, and safety. The team checklist became a fundamental aspect of pilot safety, checks and balances, and risk management. Their acronym for TEAM was Transfer, Eliminate, Accept, and Mitigate. And this checklist format is the cornerstone for many safety initiatives that you see today in healthcare. And we'll cover that a little bit coming up. So, I think it's really important that we talk about this monumental report to Errors Human, which was published in 1999 by the Institute of Medicine. And it fundamentally changed how health systems, providers, and researchers understood the occurrence of medical errors. Since the report's release, the healthcare industry continues to undergo large-scale transformation to improve the value of care. You might hear this sometimes be referred to as the quadruple aim. One factor identifies as a common contributor in medical errors is the fragmented nature of how healthcare is delivered. Communication failures are both an independent cause of preventable harm and a contributing factor underlying other harms. And I think where you can see this is in the transitions of care. That can be between shifts, between areas, between settings, acute care to less acute, to rehab, to even going home to a home and having outpatient services. There are many opportunities for communication failures which can directly cause harm. These are high-risk interactions in which critical information about the patient's status and the plan of care can be miscommunicated, which could potentially lead to harm. Subsequently, a lot of research has shown that effective teamwork enhances patient safety by reducing adverse events linked to miscommunication. There have also been lots of studies to show how we can improve communication, and some of that comes in the form of checklists or standardized tools such as the SBAR, as well as a lot of what you see in your computerized systems that have checks and balances. So the Joint Commission, they're now called the Joint Commission, and they were founded in 1991. They've had a couple other iterations during my long career. Their mission was to enable and affirm the highest standards of healthcare quality and patient safety for all. They basically established this Sentinel event policy and established a database for reporting very specific errors. They also established the national patient safety goals to which organizations were measured. And communication is and was a theme. And a lot has been done to try to achieve those goals. And hospitals were measured against those goals. And one thing that the Joint Commission found that communication breakdowns were identified as the primary root cause of treatment delays in the healthcare setting. These often led to errors, and the errors are reported 86% of the time and represented the majority of repairable defects within the hospital. So I didn't say that correctly, but communication breakdowns are usually some kind of communication error or breakdown is 86% of the time results in an error within the hospital. Other causes that the Joint Commission found were that can cause delays in treatment were patient assessment, continuum, something with the continuum of care, orientation and training, that happens a lot, availability of information, and competency and credentialing. The Joint Commission also accredits or certifies about 23,000 healthcare organizations and programs in the United States. Its mission is to enable and affirm the highest standards of healthcare quality and safety for all. You know, I mentioned the Sentinel event policy. And what the Joint Commission did was establish this database as a way to improve safety and learn from events that were recorded. These were mandatory requirements of reporting. A Sentinel event is a patient safety event, not primarily related to the natural course of a patient's illness or underlying condition, that reaches a patient and results in death, severe harm, regardless of the duration of harm, or permanent harm, regardless of the severity of the harm. An event can also be considered a Sentinel event if the outcome was not death, permanent harm, severe temporary injury, or intervention required to sustain life. Teamwork. I got my slides mixed up, and I apologize. I'm going to take 1 minute here to try to find my place. Whoops. Come on. Alright, what happened to my beautiful slide? Undo. There we go. Get out. Alright, sorry guys. Take just a quick second. I note to yourself, when you have a script like this, make sure you put page numbers at the bottom. It's a rookie error. All right. So, teamwork. Teams and collaboration really are cornerstones, as I said, of good patient care. A patient, regardless of their journey along the illness or wellness path, needs timely and accurate information that must be shared. Risks and difficulties must be discussed, and decisions must be made. And those decisions should be well informed. Without this, errors, delays in care, or poor decisions could be made. Our goal as healthcare stewards are to reduce medical errors, improve staff engagement, use limited resources more effectively, or simply enhance the patient's experience of their care. This can be done very successfully. These things can be achieved very successfully when we work in a team and we are an effective team. And again, those goals go back right to the quadruple aim. So lots of studies have been done about teamwork, and the lack of teamwork has been shown to negatively impact patient experience and outcomes, as well as staff burnout and staff satisfaction. A couple of studies have looked at the correlation between patient outcomes and teamwork. So Webster et al. Found that patient mortality was reduced by 28% by training teams to be more effective. Schmutz and colleagues found that effective teams were almost 3% of the time more likely to have positive patient outcomes versus ineffective teams. Albasari and colleagues also found that in an ED, establishing training in communication and teamwork improved the culture, improved safety, and in particular, they saw lower mortality with higher staff satisfaction. Lots of these studies look at collaboration and teamwork in nursing in different areas, and the findings are similar no matter the location. As part of your career, you will find that you will be working within a team frequently. That team could have a limited term to solve a problem, or to be a functional team such as an IV team that has, they have similar knowledge and experience, or you could be in a cross-functional, different knowledge and experience. That could be maybe a code team, or maybe it's a quality team, fall reduction team. The team could be assisting other staff, such as with lifting or transfers. They could be part of an emergency response, or they could be working as part of a collaboration, such as rounds, daily rounds, morning rounds, evening rounds, social service rounds, or a support group. The basic tenet of healthcare is communication and teamwork equals high quality. It also translates into safer care. So, oops, you're not going to advance now? All right. Oh, what happened? Okay, I have a slide that got messed up, so let's go back. There we go. Sorry guys, I apologize. Yes. Types of team. Okay, I think I went over this a little bit already. A functional is the same department, could be social work, IV, central supply. Cross-functional, they come from different departments. It could be something like daily rounds, nutrition rounds. Self-managed teams are those that are short-term and need minimal supervision. We typically don't see these in healthcare. They're typically seen in startups. I also see a few of them in my industry as we start to do rapid cycle innovations. Virtual, we use those a lot during COVID, and they can have a very different makeup. And it would be interesting to look at the research on team performance in a virtual environment. I'm sure there'll be a lot coming out soon. The other type of team could be a problem solving. It may be short or long term. That could be, a root cause analysis, which is usually a short term activity, a code team, or maybe the readmission team. Okay. Team. Together, everyone achieves more. Hold on one second. Sorry, my dog wanted to come in. So, this is just a mantra. for operating in a team. Good teams have some core pillars. They usually have good communication. It's clear and concise. They're accountable. They try not to let their teammates down. They commit, which requires clarity and moving forward. It sometimes involves seeking clarification. It involves trust. You have to rely on your team members. You need to have good chemistry, and there needs to be some transparency. The other pillar is collaboration. You need to leverage skills, knowledge, and perspectives within a team. Teamwork in nursing is really important. Oops, there we go. I knew it was coming up. Teamwork in nursing is really important because we are the eyes and ears of the patient. You know, we are the conduit to get things done. And when we work in teams as nurses, we have to have clear communication, shared decision making, and mutual respect for not only our team members within nursing, but in other disciplines. The camaraderie that comes from a harmonious team helps nurses stay positive and focused when faced with challenges and work fatigue. But not all teams in healthcare are harmonious. Sometimes those teams do not mesh well, or there could be conflict. Teams that communicate effectively and demonstrate mutual support reduce the potential for error, resulting in safety and improved clinical performance. It also improves the quality of working relationships and job satisfaction. Okay. Teamwork, however, is not innate. It must be learned, and you need to have good teachers. Improving a hospital or care system culture is a challenge. One of the few training interventions that has proven to be effective is the team steps. And I do have a slide here on that. Where did it go? Sorry, guys. I think my slides must have gotten messed up. Teams. I'm really kind of aggravated now. There we go. All right. Okay. Where are we? Here. Sorry, guys. Team Steps is a great program. They're usually, they can either hire out to have somebody do the program, or you can train in-house facilitators. If you come from a big organization, typically they will hire somebody to do that, or do some in-house training. Communication, though, is the foundation of the program. And it really was developed using methodology from both the airline industry and the military. These industries, as we talked about, focused on risk mitigation, avoidance, and recovery. This program, Team Steps, utilizes many tools to foster teamwork and enhance communication. Some of the tools are the CUS. We'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. Team huddles, debriefing, SBAR, IPASS, and a few more. And these tools support the pillars of the Team Step program. And those pillars are communication, mutual support, leadership, and situational monitoring. If you have a chance to take this, I highly recommend it. There's a lot of didactic, but there's a lot of simulations and role playing. And sometimes that may seem silly, but the scenarios are usually chosen based on things that have happened in your organization. This program is supported by the AHRQ and as well as some of the military. And many studies have shown it to be extremely effective. Let's see. Now we're going to move on. I believe conflict. Dun 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 dun. Okay, your book does an okay job at talking about conflict, but conflict can not only affect your own personal happiness, but it can affect um, your satisfaction with your job, and how well a team performs. And conflict is a disagreement between an individual who perceives a threat to their needs, interests, and or concern. That threat can be real or imagined. And your book describes conflict as a disagreement arising from differences in attitudes, values, or needs, in which the action of one party frustrates the ability of the other party to achieve his or her goals. And conflict can serve as a warning bell that something needs to be looked at closer or needs to be adjusted. It can also be viewed as constructive because it can clarify misunderstandings or disagreements about roles and tasks. Sometimes conflict can escalate or involve harsh language, blaming, and a critical breakdown in communication. And sometimes it can be very disruptive, and that can be passive or apparent. And a lot of times, most of the time, poor communication is most likely the cause of the conflict. Take a minute to think about your own relationships at home with a friend, a child, a spouse, a significant other, a parent, and what is usually the cause of conflict. I know in my house, it's communication. And sometimes in the hospital, conflict can escalate with a patient if that patient is impaired, undergoing a behavioral crisis, or have a history of mental illness or aggressive behavior, or perhaps they're under the influence. In cases like this, you need supportive services, obviously security to ensure everyone's safety, social work, mental health counselors, and you need to be supported in these environments. After these types of conflicts or situation, it really is good to do a debriefing to reflect and learn on what you can do for future incidents. And it shouldn't just be about what you did wrong, but you should celebrate what you've done right. Now, there's the other thing is conflict is inevitable. It can have both positive or negative results depending on how it is handled. If you avoid it, you are likely to have negative results. You make a mountain out of a molehill. People must be motivated to address conflict, and organizations must support conflict resolutions, and they must help train their staff to be able to resolve these conflicts successfully. People must have the skills to address conflict, and again, organizations must train their leaders to facilitate conflict resolution. They need to model the behavior as well. So, conflict can happen for a variety of reasons. We all know that the healthcare setting can be physically and emotionally stressful. It can be high-paced, and things can be misinterpreted quickly. Conflict can arise because of a lack of control, anxiety, feelings of inadequacy, vulnerability, or feeling intimidated, especially by some of the healthcare team and perhaps the hierarchy. And I think this feeling goes a lot to new nurses. And remember, you may be a nurse practicing for 20 years in med-surg, but when you pop over to ICU and you transfer, you become a new nurse again. You may not stay there very long, but you do start fresh. And healthcare teams are often used to working in high tension areas. So think a little bit about how conflict can arise today. How do patients perceive healthcare today? I can give you my perspective. Are they waiting for long periods of time in the emergency room or to get an appointment? Are they having issues accessing care? Even the urgent cares are busy. Are they having issues with reimbursement or insurance coverage? These can all be stresses. These can make people fearful and can cause conflict. And you may not be the one that is making the wait time long or having to ask about insurance coverage, but that conflict may be directed at you. So, conflict responses. Avoiding, accommodating, competing, compromising, and collaborating. Those two, compromising and collaborating, is a balance of assertiveness and cooperativeness. It's a problem-solving response compared to some of the other ones. Avoiding, and I'm specifically speaking about nurses here. Nurses who choose to avoid conflict and use avoidance as a strategy are not very effective, and this is a key one that nurses use. Accommodating, that's a low assertiveness, high cooperativeness, and I work with a lot of nurses who are like this. If you prioritize the needs and concern of the other party over one's own. The strategy is, it's kind of like your people pleaser. Often individuals want to maintain harmony in the relationship and value the relationship more than the specific issue. The next one is competing. Now this one, it's a winning attitude. So nurses who use this strategy, they tend to be overly assertive and preoccupied with that winning the argument rather than coming to a possible solution. When you compromise, you are adopting a me versus you mentality. Nurses approach this with this compromising mentality aimed at reaching a solution that makes both sides at least partially happy. And by doing so, both leave with something they want and are able to move forward implementing a solution. Collaborating, nurses who choose this as their conflict resolution strategy, they incorporate others' ideas into their own. While the result may not be as half and half as the compromising strategy, the solution still has aspects of everyone's opinion and input, and it increases buy-in and general satisfaction with the final decision. Now you all know, conflict in the workplace. What does it do? It is very draining. It can cause staff stress or distress, anxiety, depression, burnout, patient dissatisfaction. Conflict can be a key reason why people leave a job. I think the second reason is, this might be number one in conflict, is the second one, but the first one is the manager. So, dealing with conflict can bring about positive change. Yeah, right. It does. It can. It just has to be done well. You have to work at it. It's an opportunity to build a better team. And it doesn't have to be like these two ladies here who look like they're going to punch each other in the face. Hopefully it's not going to escalate to that degree. The best way to manage conflict is to address it as soon as possible. I do try to do this, but I tend to be somebody sometimes who puts it off, and that is something I'm trying to work on. Responding to conflict. There are a couple of things you can do. You may not be the person the conflict is with, but you may be there. So listen actively and display empathy. And when you're talking to the person and responding, make sure you keep your tone of voice even. Be very wary of very conscious of your body language, and try to use I statements rather than you statements. De-escalating the conflict. Be respectful. Stay in your lane. Be approachable. You don't have to be friendly, but be approachable. Communicate clearly and assume the best outcome. Now, if this conflict continues to escalate, then you need to bring in additional support to help manage the conflict. So one way of dealing with conflict is something called the DESC. The DESC stands for Describe, Explain, Specify, and Consequences. This can be used, basically it works well with interpersonal conflicts and should be used to help frame the conversation. When you are trying to frame a conversation to have with somebody to resolve conflict, choose a location, one that's private, it's not in front of a patient or other team members. Allow both parties to focus on resolving the conflict rather than on saving face. Again, use I statements rather than blaming statements. Remember that critique is not criticism, and focus on what is right, not who is right. And if you use the DESC approach, you describe, and in this case it could be, I'm sensing you are upset with me about how I addressed you this morning. Okay. It could also, next you would be explaining. When you question my judgment in front of patients, it embarrasses me and it undermines my credibility. Be specific, specify. If you are concerned about my performance, I would appreciate if we speak in private. And you could actually expand that if you needed to. I would appreciate if we speak in private, or I would appreciate if we speak in private along with, say, you're on orientation, along with my preceptor or my manager. Consequences. There may potentially be consequences to this conflict, but a lot of times it's what you expect for an outcome, and it could be positive or negative. A private conversation, let's just say, would be beneficial because I would feel less embarrassed and would be better able to answer questions. Could be ask questions or answer questions, and can we agree to follow such a process in the future? I think this is a good one. You use I statements. I feel embarrassed. And you're coming up as well with a solution about how this could work better in the future. Cuss you'll do when you're doing your video with the IHI during this module. And it is, I think it's really good because not only is it a way to avoid or deal with conflict, but it's also a great way to bring up a safety issue that unaddressed could potentially become conflict. So CUS is, the C stands for state your concern, and that could be the woman in room 5 seems unstable. State why you are uncomfortable. Her blood pressure has dropped X percentage over the last 2 hours, or her systolic blood pressure or diastolic, whatever. And then S is if the conflict is not resolved, state that there is a safety issue. And you can discuss in what way the concern is related to safety. I'm afraid that the woman in room, if her blood pressure continues to be labile, I'm afraid I might have to call a rapid response, or we might have to call a code, or that we won't get to her in time. If the safety issue is not acknowledged, then escalate it up your chain of command. That could be your charge nurse, your nursing supervisor. It could be if you're working with an intern or a medical student, it could be the resident, the attending, and so on and so forth. In acute care environments, you have a chain of command. Learn it, use it. Okay. I love this quote. Speak when you are angry and you will make the best speech you will ever regret. And I'm a good one for that. So, some references here. And that will conclude our module. And I look forward to moving forward into our next one, which is one of my favorites. They're all my favorite, okay. It's going to be health literacy, which I think is an important topic. And I did have you do one of the modules early because it was expiring, and it's a really good module on plain language. So I hope you enjoy it. And with that, goodbye.